Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain?
Is this a real song? Is this
Yes,
a real
it
song?
is. Black hole
Do you think
sun.
anyone can recognize what that song is from the way that you sang it?
What do you mean? I sounded exactly like them.
I don't know. I've never heard the song, so I don't know if that's how
I
it
sound
sounds.
incredible. Didn't you hear that melodic tone out of my mouth? It was beautiful.
Oh, are you giving an ode to me?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But you know who Soundgarden is?
Yeah.
It's them.
Really old school.
Yeah, it dates
old.
me.
Yeah.
We old, like my shirt, my Ninja Turtle shirt.
Teenage Mutant Ninja
You got this for me for my birthday. I appreciate that.
It's your birthday.
Yeah, not now, but it was.
Not today. It was your birthday. I guess she said, it was your birthday.
Yeah. It was an ode to you. You got a little black hole energy
I got
today.
black hole energy today.
Oh.
Which isn't surprising because we know that I get really triggered on days that I record the podcast.
Better than butthole energy.
Some people would say butthole energy is good energy.
Mm-hmm. You like how
on-
I'm rocking my Game Boy mug as well?
Oh.
I'm just all out 80s. We got some Transformers in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Matrix of Leadership over here. Rightfully so on my side.
Rightfully so. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah. Hey, if you guys haven't gone over to YouTube yet and subscribe there, hit the bell button.
Yeah.
You should do that now because quite honestly, what you're looking at here is pretty beautiful. It's like a piece of art. Not just the studio, but this face.
Oh.
And yours too.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really carry the show though.
Ain't that the truth?
Anyways, you can find us over on YouTube at The Connected Life. And today I want to talk about an issue that is actually one of the foundational ways that people found transformation inside of my office. This is the key that led to unlocking people very consistently.
Mm-hmm.
It started people on their personal transformation journey in a way that was like a catapult versus a lot of their other experiences. And I know because I got the feedback on it. And I want to talk about that specifically because I'm like, I know that this is something that's going to help a lot of people. It's something that changed my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to jump into that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say before we get going?
No, I'm excited about this conversation because I think it is an incredible conversation and you're really good at talking about it.
Thank you. Well, hopefully I'm great talking about it today. So I want to start, and today I want to have the dialogue about repairing the relationship with yourself and the journey of self-repentance. I want to go into a little bit of my own personal story because this is vital to the places where I actually came alive. There is the self-love movement.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful movement. I love that we have had a wave of that now for, I don't know, is it maybe 10 years, maybe? 15 years has been working. That's been in operation and movement. And that is something that didn't exist when we first started out in our process. It was something that we were in our own personal self-discovery of self-love. And for me, in that journey, I had a lot of personal self-hatred. And that self-hatred looked like immense amounts of self-criticism, very harsh self-judgments.
Yeah.
I was very much always against myself. And I really believed the idea that if I was just dissatisfied enough with myself, that I would become the man that I dreamed I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Or I become the person that people wanted me to be. I become acceptable in people's eyes. I become favorable in relationships. Like it would make me special. Like if I could just do enough to hate myself, I would then be motivated to change in all the right ways.
I think that's a really common feeling. I had the exact same experience when I was younger, which was I believed that beating myself up and turning against myself could get me to the end goal I wanted. I had this vision of this perfect person who knew what to say and knew how to act and was comfortable in their own skin. And I thought, if I, beat up on myself or whip myself every time that I say the wrong thing in public, or every time that I'm awkward, or every time that I don't do something right, then eventually something inside of me will just spring up with resilience and charisma and charm and love, and I'll suddenly be that person that I've always wanted to be. And it's a crazy scenario that I think I hate myself, and if I hate myself more, maybe this great version of me will come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, I didn't know that this was part of this situation, but I lived with a lot of anxiety inside of my life. Now, there's a lot of things that played a role in that anxiety, but at the core of it, I felt this sense of anxiety, like no matter what I'm going to do, somehow the world's going to be dissatisfied with me.
Yeah.
And so I perceived my external world as being dissatisfied, which is reasonable. There's a lot of things that happen in my past that would say, okay, the world outside of me is dissatisfied with me.
Yes.
However, this perpetual anxiety that was coming up, I wasn't hearing feedback from the world around me currently that said, I'm constantly dissatisfied with you. You're not enough.
Mm-hmm. Like you had friends who loved you and cared about you. And after a certain point in your life, you were no longer being bullied. Yeah,
because there was a lot of bullying when I growing up as a kid. Excuse me. There was a lot of bullying that happened to me growing up as a kid. And then, as I got older, the bullying disappeared, and yet I still was feeling inadequate.
The voice of the bullying didn't stop.
Correct. And the voice of painful exchanges with authority figures, be it parents, grandparents, teachers in school that I had, like they were long gone out of the picture. And yet those voices didn't stop.
So like as you grew up, you're saying, and people are no longer criticizing everything that you're doing, and they're no longer saying you're not enough. But the voice inside is still criticizing everything you're doing and saying you're not enough.
Right. So I have the programming of that voice on repeat consistently. Mm-hmm. And every time I made an attempt to do something, whether it was create, whether it was show up to college, or it was have a relational conversation with someone, anxiety was consistently in the background, just inside of my gut playing out. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of take a look at this, because I'm like, why? Like, who or what is going to punish me? Mm-hmm. My outside circumstances are giving me feedback that I'm favorable, accepted, enjoyed, and yet I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And what is that other shoe? So I share this story quite often, but it was a little while after we got married, and I had a paralyzing fear of being a failure, whatever that word encompassed, right? Yeah. Like, what is it to be a failure? I don't know, but I just didn't want to be one. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea of like, I'm always going to be a failure. I'm never not going to fail. Mm-hmm. And I was driving down the road one day, and I did a review of my life by myself driving in the truck. And I was like, who told me that I'm going to be a failure? Like, where is this voice just on repeat from? And as I'm examining my household, I'm like, actually, my parents always told me I could do anything and be anything. They were actually incredibly encouraging in those ways. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of incredible feedback from teachers and professors in college, all of which said, you're one of our greatest students. You're going to have an excellent life. We can't wait to see where your life goes with that. And so as I'm kind of like examining those areas, I have this like thought that pops into my mind. And this thought is, I am the one that's been telling me for years that I'm going to be a failure. And this phrase like just hit me like a ton of bricks. Mm-hmm. I am the one. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that's done it. And all of a sudden, as I realized that, I have this thought, oh, I've become the bully in my life. Like long after the things that felt like were bullying me in my life disappeared, I had picked up every negative expression and then I had amplified it towards myself and I had declared it holy. I had made destructive, harsh, critical comments holy. And I justified them saying they will purify me, right? Like this will make me
a better person,
in my life. And all of a sudden, as I connected with this, I felt this ache inside of me. And I had this realization on top of that, which was, oh, my anxiety that I live with consistently is a part of my being that is constantly waiting for me to bully it. For those of you who are just joining us, we've been in the emotional health field for 15 years now. We've had over 4,000 clients and we've had over 10,000 people take our courses. And the cool thing is that in that whole process, we've actually had thousands of people tell us that taking our courses has radically transformed their lives, their relationships. And the reality is it's not just because of the information, it's because of the community aspect. And that's what's so cool and unique about Reclaiming You. It's 14 weeks of live community experience that you're going to have when you join us for that. So come join us.
Any circumstance, you're like, you subconsciously know when I leave this, I'm going to beat myself up for everything I said wrong.
Correct.
When I leave this moment, I am going to think through everything I could have done better. And then I'm going to be like, why were you so stupid? Why did you say it that way? Why didn't you say this joke? How come you didn't know how to do this? They probably were thinking this about you. And so you're having anxiety because you know that after every interaction, self-criticism is going to come out mean. And you're going to be like bullied by yourself.
Correct.
And I think that this is something you're talking about that is so important for so many of us. I've been working in trauma counseling because I went through a bunch of events that caused some really nice, beautiful PTSD. And all of the trauma counseling is built on restoring that connection of safety with you. That is like the thing that is the foundation for what you truly need to be able to be resilient in the world, is to actually be able to be safe with yourself. And you're describing how for years you weren't safe with yourself. And I know for me, when you're talking about that, even just having an aha of like, yeah, I haven't ever thought through how much anxiety I had because of what I knew I was about to do to me.
Correct.
It was
bracing for that inevitable.
My soul knows I'm about to rake you over the coals.
Yes.
I'm about to tell you every single thing you did. I'm about to OCD loop about how you're not enough and how you need to be more. And that feeling of knowing that rejection is about to come, even though it's self-rejection. Like I think, and we're doing that to protect ourselves. Like and that's what I believed. If I reject myself first, your rejection won't hurt me. So I thought, if I beat myself up for everything I said wrong in this conversation or every action I've done wrong, then if you think something I said was stupid or lame, I'm like, oh yeah, I already know that.
Yeah.
I already know that I was dumb. I already know that I shouldn't have said it that way. I already know it was bad. I've already beat myself up for it. It felt like I won't ever be caught off guard by rejection if I reject myself immediately first. But I was never thinking, what is that doing to my soul to know that I have committed to reject it before I've even been in the situation, instead of committing to love and accept it? Well,
the question is, am I my own greatest advocate, or am I my own greatest adversary? And when I was in this moment, I looked up in the rearview mirror and I had caught my eyes. Like I saw my eyes, and oftentimes we see our eyes and they're just our eyes. We see our face, it's just our face. We're not intimately connected to it as though it's another person. And as I'm looking in the rearview mirror, I can see so clearly, here is a man named Justin, and here is his story. And the reality of my story starts flashing before my eyes. Like, he's been through this in his childhood. He's fought through these type of difficulties. He's carried these types of pains. You know, he's carrying this type of anxiety inside of his life, these insecurities. Like, I'm well aware of the fullness of his makeup. And all of a sudden I humanized Justin. Like, it wasn't just a reflection. It wasn't just, oh, I see all the problems on this face or whatever. It was, there is a human being, and I now have a sense of compassion for his condition. And his condition has been a really difficult one, and he is in desperate need of love and care. And as I humanized myself, all of a sudden, I was able to look at the way that I had talked to myself, and I said, I would not normalize talking to another individual like this the way that I constantly talk to myself. Like, I would not sit and be like, I should normalize this. This is good and healthy. This is going to make a great relationship with another person. I think we'll be so close if I just talk to them like this all the time. Like, no one would feel empowered and helped, and no one would feel like I was their advocate. And as I was doing that, I felt grief.
Yeah.
Like, I felt this immense wave of grief. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking into another human being's eyes, I'm like, I need to say I'm sorry. Like, I could feel like I have to apologize to this person because I've treated them incredibly poorly. And I began the process of saying, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me for this. And I started an aspect of a repentance process, which was acknowledging that the way that I thought and the way that I operated wasn't okay, and acknowledging that I had remorse for it and that I wanted to make a shift. And I began to, as I began to apologize, I suddenly started to just cry. Like, and it was very surreal because I felt like I was split in the sense of like,
there's a part of you that had been hearing all of this criticism, and there's a part of you that had been giving all of this criticism.
Correct. So it was like, I was very well aware that there were two separate beings. Like, I could feel my logical current self being like, I realize how I've been operating towards this person. I could feel that heart part of me that's saying, yes, I've been needing to hear this for years. It's been so painful the way that you've communicated to me. And so I just wept driving down the road. I wept, and it felt like food to my soul, water to a man who was in the desert. And I remember saying, like, I am committed to learning how to become your best friend. I'm committed to learning how to take ownership for the ways that I've abused you. And I want to repair that. And I understood very clearly that it would take a while.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, this isn't going to happen overnight. Like,
here's what I love, that realistic, talking to yourself like a realistic promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't spend years tearing someone down and thinking that relationship can be repaired
in one conversation.
Correct. And so that began to change my entire trajectory as I not only started to become aware of how I was operating in the current moment, but I was like, I need to go back and take time with my history.
Wow.
So that, I would say that I visited maybe thousands of moments now.
Wow.
Over the last 16 years. I still, to this day, I'll have a memory pop up of a way that something happened and I shamed myself that I hadn't thought of in years, and it just pops up.
Yeah.
And I have this working relationship with the man in the mirror that I now have a free flow of information. Like a lot of people, their hearts will try and have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be like this memory will pop up out of nowhere and they're like, that's so weird. I had this memory today. I don't even know. I haven't thought of that in 25 years. And then they're just like dismiss it.
Yeah.
But like when those things happen, I know that my heart is wanting to have a conversation with me about something that it wants reconciled.
Mm-hmm.
And so throughout the last, 15, 16 years, whenever I get that, I'm like, why are you sharing this with me today? Is this something that's familiar that I need to deal with regarding other people? Or is this an inward thing that I need to attend to?
Right. Is there a place that I need to reconcile with myself from this past memory?
Correct.
And I think what you're talking about is so interesting. This idea of, you talked about humanizing yourself in the mirror. And I remember going through this exact process for myself. And we've honestly worked with thousands of people in this specific process. This is what we became known for, is helping people reconcile with themselves. And one of the common things is like, I would never talk to someone else the way I talk to myself.
Yeah.
Like I would never, it's fine though that I treat myself like this. It's fine that I shame myself. It's fine that I punish myself. It's fine that I criticize myself, because I would never do that to someone else. And so when you're talking about humanizing the person in the mirror, you're talking about saying like, I actually am as much of a human as the people around me. And I actually matter as much. And the way that I treat myself is like treating a human that way. Is God happy with me degrading and demeaning myself? And a lot of people were like, no, that's fine. You're allowed to do that to yourself. But if you treated somebody else the exact same way, they'd be like, that's abusive.
Yeah.
And so the idea of humanizing yourself is that concept of, I'm going to see that I matter as a human as much as the people around me matter. And so that means how I talk to myself. I'm worthy of kindness and gentleness and patience from myself. And so many of us get into toxic relationships that are mirroring how we treat ourselves.
Correct.
So we beat ourselves up. We're not kind. We're easily grumpy. We have huge reactions to ourselves. Things are high stakes. We remove love quickly. And so when someone else does it, that feels normal.
Yeah.
That feels comfortable for us. And the journey of breaking out of toxic relationship patterns is beginning to break out of the toxic relationship pattern you have with yourself. What if I think it's never okay to be cruel to myself? What if I start being gentle towards myself? What if I'm kind to myself? Then when somebody else doesn't treat me the way that I'm treating myself, I'm going to be like, oh, that does not fit here.
Yeah.
These two don't fit together, because now I have a standard for how I treat myself. But it took me years to learn to rewire how I talked to myself. It took me years to get out of the abusive relationship that I was in internally with myself.
Yeah. It's interesting because people don't really realize, well, let me back up. The majority of every person that walked into my office had self-hatred.
Yeah.
I would say, you have self-hatred. No, I don't have self-hatred. And then we would begin to go on a journey of the inner dialogue conversations. Like, how many times a day do you make a mistake? And you're like, oh, I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? Why would I do this?
Right.
Oh, get it together. Figure your shit out, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
you're so behind. Everyone else is ahead of you. You're never going to catch up.
Correct. And then once we get the inner dialogue conversation out on the table, they're like, oh my God, I hate myself. Like, that is terrible.
Part of me dislikes a lot.
But there's an expression of self-hatred that it is not unconditional love.
Yeah.
It is not acceptance. It is not kindness. It is not gentleness. It is not patience towards ourselves.
Yeah.
And when they begin to examine that, they're like, oh, I can now see it. And then the grief for them came up across the board, because they're like, I wouldn't want any human being to feel that. But one of the things that was vital for that to happen, going back to the humanization component, one of the things that is vital for that to happen is that we need to actually see ourselves and our story, which is what I was talking about earlier, right? So oftentimes I would have clients stand next to me in front of this giant mirror in my office. And I would have them just settle in and just be in front of themselves. And I'd ask, what are you currently feeling? Oftentimes it was anxiety. I don't like what I see.
Anger, discomfort.
I want to look away as fast as possible. I want to run. I hate you for making me do this. I'm like, wow, there is a big war between you and that person. And I would begin to have them describe, what's that person's story? What are the major life pain points that person's been through? And as they would begin to describe the journey of pain and process that person had been through, all of a sudden their eyes would begin to well up and singular tears would begin to fall down their face. And I'd say, what's happening? And they're like, I feel like I'm connecting with myself for the first time ever. And I'm well aware of that person's experience. And I would even reflect what they were saying. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That person lived a lot of their life feeling like they didn't have love. That person lived a lot of their life feeling rejected in these ways. That person felt a lot of their life feeling stupid and foolish. And I begin to reflect that over them. And as they heard it from me, it amplified. Like, yes, that's true to my story, because it began to validate the experience. So the logical adult, what kind of like was allowing the heart part of themselves to be seen all of a sudden. And that part of themselves is like, I am so sad. And excuse me. And this is so painful. And then the adult part of themselves would be in agreement with that, like acknowledging it, like that's true.
Yeah.
And I watched, like, even right now, I'm just randomly having people's faces flash. Yeah. I had a military officer that had been shot repeated times, being in a position of protective security, almost like the Secret Service. And they did not cry. They were not a crier whatsoever.
Totally.
And all of a sudden they start weeping and their knees begin shaking and they collapse to the ground and they just start wailing because that part of themselves that had been ignored and been beat up on for so long finally was seen.
So you're talking about, like, he's finally seen how much he's gone through. He's finally seen how much he's endured, how much he's pushed through, how hard he's tried, how, like, all of those things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And he's all of a sudden intimate. Like it's this idea of becoming intimate, emotionally intimate with ourselves, where we are truly understanding and connecting to the reality of our condition, both historically and currently, that's happening.
Yeah. So you're like, I'm actually seeing this person as more complex. I'm seeing that they've been through a lot. I'm seeing that they have gifts and strengths and weaknesses. Like, typically when we're beating ourselves up, we're only looking at the flaws and the things that we're failing at and the things that we haven't done well. And you're saying, I'm helping people see that there's so much more complexity to who they are, that there's so much more to their experience.
And not just complexity, but yes, that's correct. Also, I'm helping them to eliminate dismissal and denial.
Yeah.
Because we spend our lifetimes usually dismissing our experiences, denying that stuff ever happened. And so there's this big, like, bucket of invalidation that exists within us. And we keep trying to get validation from the people around us. Maybe it's our spouse, maybe it's our friends, maybe it's our jobs. We're wanting everything around us to validate the reality of our existence, validate our value, validate the pain that we've been through, when at the end of the day, our soul is screaming, no, I need you to validate me. I need you to remove the denial Band-Aid. I need you to stop dismissing what I'm actually experiencing right now. And I need you to face this.
Yeah.
And so as people began to do that, again, they connected with the grief. And they also began to realize, like, oh, I am perpetuating the anxiety inside of my life. Like, the reality is that the person that we spend 24/7 with, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with, 365 days a year with, the person we cannot escape is usually our greatest adversary.
Right.
We shared earlier about reclaiming you. This next year, we're also kicking off an online membership called The Connection Cure. With The Connection Cure, you can get access to all of our courses and our online resources for one low price. Now, if you jump into Reclaiming You, you're going to get early access to The Connection Cure free with your purchase of Reclaiming You.
Yeah, so you'll get the Compassion Project, the Father Series, Living Fully Alive, Pathway to Freedom, and Relationship Glue, along with the thing I'm most excited about, our Regulation Library, which has over 70 guided regulation exercises for you to be able to start to retrain your nervous system to feel peace and connected to yourself.
Come join us January 11th, 2025 for Reclaiming You and get on board for the Connection Cure.
Yeah. You get a bonus in the Connection Cure for as long as you're doing it. And that causes us so much stress and so much chaos and so much pain and rejection and fear. And I know, like, when you're talking to him, like, I know that feeling. Like, I spent most of my life wanting to get away from me. I spent most of my life, like, if we talk about having like multiple parts to our personality. So there's like, there's part of me that is me. And then part of me that's like, I just want free from you. I want to be away from you. Like, I had so much shame and so much self-hatred and so much social anxiety. And I was so mean to myself that the feeling was, I want to escape my body. I want to get away from me. And for me, I really started looking at that as in, like, I was in war within myself. And what that did is that kept me in a constant state of fight or flight. Correct. It kept me in a constant state of dysregulation. Like, I had battle inside of me, and that created battle outside of me too. I was drawn to trauma. I was drawn to circumstances that magnified that level of stress that was going on inside of my own internal world. And I didn't realize so much of my life, I spent time trying to figure out my relationships, who is safe, who isn't safe, who's a good friend, who's not a good friend, who's a good person to date, who's not a good person to date. And I didn't realize if I would have spent that much energy focused on how do I change how I relate to myself, I naturally would have been drawn to people who treated me with the same level of respect that I treated myself with. And you don't have to fight for a lot of times I was drawn to people who didn't treat me well. And I would feel frustrated. Like, why am I drawn to red flags? Why do I keep finding the same type of people that keep hurting me the same type of ways? And what I didn't realize is I needed to, oh my gosh, the word just flew out of my brain and I'm not going to beat myself up for it. I need to disrupt this pattern. And I didn't. And so I kept trying to feel like, how do I find a different kind of guy to be attracted to? How do I find a different type of friend to be drawn to? Instead, what I could have done to disrupt it is, how do I start to make kindness normal to myself? How do I start to end the war within? Because the war inside of me is what keeps perpetuating the war outside of me. And I don't think I knew it was possible. I don't think I knew that you could be gentle towards yourself. I don't think I knew that you could be compassionate towards yourself. And this is something, I mean, in all of our programs, we literally have a compassion program to help people go on this journey. And we teach a school. And one of the fruits of the school that I love the most is people start to hear a compassionate self voice towards themselves. They start to hear gentleness, kindness. They start to hear a voice that says, oh, it's okay that you're still learning. Oh, it's okay that you haven't figured that out yet. Of course you're feeling scared because this is scary for you. Of course this is going on. You're doing so good. You're being so brave. And I didn't know that there was a way to have a voice that sounded good and kind towards myself and genuinely mean it.
Yeah. It's interesting talking about the voices that we have and the voice towards ourselves. I was talking with a gentleman just the other day who was just such a wonderful young man. And he was kind of revisiting pieces of his history. And one of the things that he felt about himself is he kept using the phrase, I don't want to be weird.
I can't show people that I'm weird.
Yeah. I want to make sure that I do everything that I can so that they don't think that I'm strange. And that phrase kept repeating over and over again. I said, I'm just curious, who specifically in your history, like, do you remember, like, were kids calling you strange and weird all the time? And well, I was bullied, but no. I said, did your family, like, just fill me in here? And he did a lot of contemplation. He was like, no one ever that I can remember called me weird or strange. I said, so where did that originate? He said, oh, that originated in me. And
it was a self-judgment that he made about himself, probably at a young age.
The self-judgment. So we started having the conversation that we're having now. And we were able to unearth the voice of self-criticism and the voice of self-hatred. And I said to him, what do you think about letting go of those voices? I said, and he was like, I don't know. I go, I bet it feels like this voice is your voice. These thoughts are your thoughts. And this self-hatred and, self-criticism is who you are.
Whoa.
And he was like, yeah, I can't tell. I couldn't distinguish any separation between the two. And I said, what if for 1 second, I would challenge you on this. And what if it were to be that self-hatred and that self-criticism, their voice is not actually your voice. Their words are not your words. They are not who you are. However, you have empowered them inside of your life because you were created in and through unconditional love. So the truth of your being is that you are love. You are kindness. You are gentleness. You are patience, right? Like, this is the truth of your being over here. This stuff over here is not. And so I said, look at it like this.
You're saying, like, his authentic self.
His authentic self is none of this. This is not his DNA is not made up of self-hatred. His DNA is not made up of self-judgment and self-criticism. These things are separate from who he is, but he is empowering them. Yeah. It is not his design. And I said, let's imagine this. Your body is a temple or a house, right? And you have self-hatred and self-criticism and self-judgment. They have taken over that house. They are like hoarders, and they have spray painted the walls. They brought
all of their stuff with them.
They brought all of their garbage. They've made this huge mess, and you have been serving them in your own home. They're like, hey, go get me this. Go get me that. Go beat up on that guy over there. Do what? Go beat up on him. Tell him he's garbage for us. Tell him he's weird and he's strange.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then you run over and you start berating that young man, that good-hearted man that's over in the corner, and you tell him how terrible he is. And you keep looking back at them for their affirmation. Am I good with self-hatred? Am I good with self-judgment? And they're like, yeah, keep it up. Do it. This is good for you. It's good for him. Everything's going to be better. And I said, they are running amok inside of your home.
Right.
And what they don't want you to understand, what they don't want you to have a revelation of, is that this is your home and you can kick them out at any time you want.
Yes.
And so they have built leverage, making you believe that they are who you are first and foremost. And that
you can't separate
from them. And they've built the leverage of, you need us in order to get what you want.
Yeah.
And I said, and the question becomes, in all of their promises, have you got what you want? Do you feel more accepted? Do you feel more peace? Do you feel more safe inside of relationships? Do you feel any of this? He's like, nope, not at all. Not at all. I've spent years doing this, believing that I needed this in order to be accepted and be okay.
And it's never got me closer to love.
It has never gotten you closer to love. And I said, and that's where you need leverage. Like, you need to start creating leverage on the other side, leverage based in a higher truth. The truth of the matter is, these things are not only not who I am, but they're also not giving me what they promised that they're going to give me.
When you're talking about leverage, you're talking about a reason to let go of what you've used in the past.
Correct.
It's like in the past, I've used self-criticism and self-hatred to try to get where I'm going. And you're talking about the logical leverage of saying, has self-hatred made me a better person? Has it got me the things that I want? Has it gotten me to where I need to go? Does self-hatred have the capacity to move me towards love? Because ultimately, every heart wants to be loved and belong.
Correct.
Every heart wants to not be abandoned. And self-hatred causes abandonment, causes us to feel alone. Self-hatred actually creates like a rip inside of us.
Yes.
And so it creates everything that we're trying to get out of.
Yep. So this leverage is something that's vital in the whole process, because once you expose the reality of the conditioning that you've been participating inside of, all of a sudden you're able to get something that you really need, which is called fury. Because you have to perceive that there's an injustice that's taking place in order to enter into fury.
Yeah.
Like prior to me seeing the reality of what existed, I felt like this thing that had been in my life, all these aspects of self-hatred and judgment, all that, I perceived it as the hero of the story.
Right.
Then all of a sudden I see it, not only is it not the hero, but it's the villain. It's the villain of my story, and it's robbed me of all these things. So then I connect with this sense of injustice. This is so unjust what's happened. My life is worse off. I've been pissing away years of life, hating myself in all these ways, missing out on quality relationships and experiences, all because I have bought into the bullshit that this thing has sold to me. And what that provoked was fury. And it wasn't fury towards myself.
Yeah.
It was fury towards these things that no longer had a right inside of my life.
Fury towards the voice of shame, the voice of criticism, the voice of self-hatred.
Correct.
The voice of punishment in your life. So something inside of you, and I think this is a really important part of self-love, is to get angry at the voices that have been bullying you.
Right. And this is part of the tipping point for any person that gets transformation. This is part of the tipping point inside of it. It's when something inside of them says, this is not okay. And an energy rises up that I call fury. It's this passionate anger.
Where you're like, enough is enough.
It's a righteous anger that rises up inside of you and says, I will no longer be bound by the slavery of this circumstance inside of my soul. There's like two things everybody pretty much universally loves.
Ooh.
Sex and money. We're not going to give you sex, but we're going to give you money. Here's the deal. Black Friday is about to hit.
Yes.
And if you want to jump into Reclaiming You for January 11th, 2025, you can jump in on Black Friday and sign up with us, and you can save $100. That's right.
Yes. Go to Justin and Abby /Reclaiming You. And when you put it in the cart, where there's a promo code, just write The Connected Life and you will make money. Listen, there's no better gift to give yourself or the people around you than having a regulated nervous system.
Yeah. And besides the regulated nervous system, you can take that money and buy something nice for someone you love, and then they'll give you the gift of sex. I'm just saying, you can get it all.
Prostitution. that sounds horrible.
But go to justinandabby.com /reclaiming-you and during the whole Black Friday season, and you can get your $100 off.
Yeah, and there's a fight back energy, like the analogy you're giving of it's your house and there's these people in your house that have bullied you and taken over.
Correct.
You're talking about the fury to say, no. Get out of my house.
Yes.
I'm moving your stuff out of my house. No, you can't come back in. I'm going to say no as many times as I need to until you know that you're not welcome here. And I'm going to clean my house up because it's my house.
Yep.
I remember this exact feeling that you're talking about. I didn't call it fury, but I called it getting my fight back. And the picture I had was that my city was like Gotham City, and it had become overrun by criminals that were corrupting things. And I had just let it happen. Again, there had to be a tipping moment for me where I was like, I am Batman.
I am Batman.
I am Batman. I had to be like, no, enough is enough. I'm going to fight back. This city is my city. And I have the power to be like, no, get Penguin out of here. So one of the,
sure, yeah.
Look at me doing it. Joker, you're gone. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I have to move the villains that had been bullying the citizens out of my city. And for you, the house analogy is great. You have to remove the bullies, the bullies that are telling you, you have to go beat him up. Being like, no, I'm not going to go beat him up anymore. I'm going to stand up to my own bullying voice inside.
Correct.
And one of the things that I think is so important about this, you talked about how no one had ever called him weird. And that is true. A lot of us make our own judgments and conclusions from the pain we go through. And then we just label ourselves and we beat ourselves up for that.
Right. We hear the voice of accusation. We grab hold of it and then we empower it.
Yes. There's another thing that happens though, when we are bullied with specific words.
Yeah.
And those words are like the voice of accusation through a person.
Correct.
Saying cruel things about us.
Mm.
But what we can do is we can grab those words, we can grab that audio and just loop it on replay over and over and over again. It becomes like Instagram, you know, those sound, you play a reel and it just keeps looping over and over again, the sound of it. That's what can happen with the voice of accusation when we've been bullied or hurt or wounded, and it can just replay. And I told people you have to get that fury. And the way I would describe it is you need to want revenge. And people are like, that's not like really a self-help concept. And I was like, no, you need to want revenge on the people that told you you were nothing, you'd never amount to something, that you weren't smart, that you couldn't be capable, that you weren't worthy of love. You need to get fury, not towards them, because they're gone. You need to get fury towards the voice of them that you're still listening to.
Right.
You're still like, if you've already, your ex-husband used to say this to you all the time, but you're still replaying it, you need to be like, no, revenge is, I refuse to listen to what you said about me. Mm-hmm. I refuse to let how you labeled me define my future. I am not going to say to myself what you said to me. I'm not going to agree with that anymore. And there has to be that moment where you decide to stand up to the accusation that you're still listening to from your childhood, from your ex, from your bully. Like, I know people who were bullied when they were kids and they're still saying those words to themselves 20 years later.
Yeah. Well, going back to kind of like unhinging ourselves from these things, as you get connected to the fury or the righteous anger and you are wanting to perpetuate justice, oftentimes when we have pain, we want to get justice from it creating pain for someone else.
Yeah.
Right? We want to let them know how terrible they are. And you kind of talked about like
hurt them.
The idea of revenge and justice is like, my revenge isn't going to be like, I'm going to inflict more. My revenge is that I'm going to break out of the cycle that's inside of me and no longer empower the darkness that was weaponized against me through the voice of accusation.
Yes.
I'm going to change it into a voice of love and acceptance. And so part of that process, even when we use this house analogy, is that first off, we have to understand that this is my house. I have 100% power over it. I have all authority over it. Like, I own the deed to this home.
Yes.
And this voice of accusation, like if we're personifying it, it does not want us to recognize that we have all power over our home. It does not want us to recognize that they are not who we are, right? Because ultimately, if we recognize these truths, then these things lose their home. Yeah. Like this energy, this concept, this thought process loses its home. So when I'm talking to somebody, like for instance, this young man about his all of these concepts, he immediately got resistant to like love. He was like, oh, I don't know, this thing inside of me is like really angry and wants to resist this. And I'm like, that thing you feel, that's not you. That's not who you are. That's the thing that doesn't want you to kick it out of what it perceives as its home. Like, it wants to have ownership over you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some people can perceive this as like, no, these are just some of the protectors we form. Well, this protector wants to keep shitting in your house. Like, it wants to keep you small and feeling inadequate and not being the fullness of who you are. And it is not serving you.
Yeah.
And so inside of that, all of a sudden, as we realize I have all rights, I have the deed to this house. And this happened for me. I was like, no, this is my house. You're not welcome here anymore. You have to go, get out. I remember I had a meltdown moment. This is separate from the time in the truck. I was like at the house looking like a crazy person. Like if I was on a reality show, they'd be like, here's a nut job. Let's take a look at him. But I was like yelling at myself internally. And I was like, you are not welcome here anymore. This is my home. I don't want you in this place. And I was allowing myself to connect again with that righteous anger and fury. And I was like, this has to go. This is done. I invite love into these places. I invite acceptance. I want acceptance to take up a home inside of me. I want truth to take up a home. I want wisdom. I want kindness. I want patience to be my best friend in this place. And I started creating an invitation to this other voice of truth, like that came in personified, came in different ways, like truth and kindness and patience and all of this. And I was like, this is what I want to make a holy habitation out of my insides. Like, I want these things to come and sit down and break bread with me. I want to commune with these things. And as I did that, I could feel me operating and utilizing my will. I could feel the shift start taking place. As I was breaking out of the fog, the heaviness, the depression that came with this other voice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am taking my life back. I get to dictate the quality of my life, my internal life moving forward. And the revelation of personal ownership and power in that way shifted something for me. I'm like, I don't have to live like this anymore. I get to define how I live.
Yeah, it's so powerful inviting love in to the places that we've said love couldn't go. And it's amazing how much we all are dying for love, but terrified of it.
Yeah.
And there's so many pockets of us that we are terrified or unlovable. And it almost feels like letting love in could expose how unlovable we are, is what I think people feel. But all of us, all humans are driven towards trying to find safe, secure love.
Yeah.
Towards trying to be accepted, towards wanting to belong. There's this innate need for love that is wired into humans. And so just even you being like, I invite love in here, it disrupts the pattern when you're like, oh, this is where I normally beat myself up. So for me, I did this process of like, I'm kicking you out, but I had to work for a few years to actively keep them out until I had like a whole new house that was fully, I mean, not a whole new house, but like where it was so much easier.
New inhabitants.
Yeah.
That were basically running the show.
Love was in my house as a tenant, and peace was in my house, and patience and compassion. They began to live in my house. And as I invited them to live in my house, then there was no longer room for accusation and bullying and criticism. And so I had to start creating new relationships with compassion, kindness. And that was a process for me. But one of the ways you can disrupt it is even just, I would notice, I'm having a conversation, and after the conversation, I'm starting to beat myself up. And I'd be like, I invite the presence of love here in this moment. And sometimes even just saying it, words are powerful.
Yeah, they are.
Even if I don't feel it. Yeah. Sometimes just saying, I invite the power of love into this moment. I invite the presence of love into this moment. I need help. Unconditional love. I need help to love and accept myself after that conversation. Even just beginning to disrupt what is just the normal brain pathway that we had, because we automate things. So our brain will automatically go to self-criticism until we consciously disrupt it and then train it that there's a new there's a new pathway it can take. It can take a path towards patience and kindness and like, oh, I see how cute you were. You're so endearing. You're so cute when you fumbled around and when they didn't understand your joke. It was so like endearing, like there's just so many different ways that we can handle talking to ourselves. Oh, of course you don't know how to interact with every group right away. That's normal. So many people struggle with social anxiety. You're right on track. You're doing great. Like learning that process is what enabled it so that the self-hatred or self-criticism, when it came back, didn't have room because I actually was still filling the house with something new. There was a new voice. The voice of accusation wasn't the voice I was listening to anymore, but there's still a soundtrack in the house. Now it's just the voice of compassion, of kindness, of gentleness, of patience.
What I noticed is that, so this restoration process started opening up a deeper doorway of understanding inside of myself, and it also opened up a doorway to creativity and dreams. Mm-hmm. And we'll kind of unpack this really quick on everything that you're saying. Like, oftentimes people don't know what they want. They don't know what they desire. They don't know what they dream. They don't know why they do what they do. They can't get inside access to anything. Mm-hmm. They're like, I don't know, I'm cut off. And if you ask them about it, they just like, they draw a blank oftentimes and they try to come up with logical answers. Mm-hmm. So the restoration process, as we begin the repentance and everything, what happens is we begin to foster a safe connection. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly it's almost like this kid who's been locked away in a room starving for years starts believing that maybe you're not going to be a jerk.
Totally.
And starts coming to the door and popping his head out and being like, hi there. Mm-hmm. And like when you ask questions like, what do I want? Like historically, when you were asked, what do you want? What do I want? And then you'd give an answer and you'd be like, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. I want a car. I want to go on this date. I want to meet this person. I want to try this new thing. That's stupid. You shouldn't want that. That's dumb. People will make fun of you. Like we so harshly shut that voice down, right? But as we do the repair process, all of a sudden something inside of me says, I'm safe to share more. And so I learned how to honor what I hear. So like when I hear stuff, I don't say, you're dumb, you're stupid. I'm like, oh my gosh, I heard something. My logic brain, that doesn't make sense to me what I heard. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be an investigator. I'm going to get curious and ask questions, and I'm going to be kind. So I'd start like being like, heart, what do you want? What do you need? What pain do you want to share with me? And all of a sudden I started having this interactive relationship where I could get access to these revelatory ahas on things that I was spending years spinning my wheels on, not being able to get answers. Like, we look outside of us trying to get answers from the people and the world and all this information outside of us.
Leaders.
When everything that we need is actually sitting right deep down inside of here. If we can repair this relationship, we can begin to get the answers that we're needing.
Yeah, when I am connected to myself and in alignment, inspiration naturally flows and answers naturally come. And that's why when we train consultants to meet with people, we're training them how to help people reconcile back to themselves. Because if you reconcile back to yourself, you'll find the answers. We're not here to tell you stay or go in your marriage. We're here to help you reconcile back to yourself, because when you're reconciled back to yourself, you will have the ability to hear your own voice, right? Your own inspiration. And you also have the ability to connect to the divine in such a deeper way when you're connected to yourself. And so,
and you can, like, that's where in connecting to myself and watching clients connect to themselves, they're able to ask the question, what do I need to heal? And then they could find out what they needed. Like I started hearing, oh, I need this. I need that. I need to have this conversation with this person. I need love in this way. I need to take time for myself. And I was able to start fostering repair through asking those questions and hearing from that.
Yeah, I love that.
Do you have anything more you want to say about this?
If this episode impacted you, please share it. That's the one that we do a lot of free content. We want to help people A lot of therapists have thanked us. They're like, this is something free I can give clients. And people who can't afford therapy have been like, thank you so much. The one thing that helps us is if you just share episodes with people, because it really can impact people's lives.
Yeah. And I want to send everyone away with this, which is like a piece of homework. Like if you're listening to this, it may feel overwhelming. It could feel scary. It could feel like, oh, I've heard self-love before, but like I would suggest sitting down, like take a trip to the mirror, like homework for the next week. Go to the mirror 5 minutes a day, stand in the mirror and just look at yourself and just be open to notice what comes up inside of you. Do you have feelings of wanting to get out? Do you have memories that pop up? Do you have anger that pops up? Do you have happiness? Like just start recognizing it. Become aware. It's just an exercise to become aware of what is this relationship that I have with myself. And I think that that's a great place to start. And then that will get you moving in a trajectory to actually find repair and healing as you need. So,
yeah. And I would say the other thing is take something from this and be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
Find a moment to be kinder. Find a moment to say no to the voice that is so normalized to you of accusation and start disrupting the pattern. Also, you can go to justinandabby.com to sign up for the course and be with us to invite more love into your life. And I like you a lot.
Are you talking to them or me?
I'm talking to both. I was talking to you and I said I like you a lot, but I like them a lot too.
I like y'all a lot. I like hearing from people.
Yeah.
I like when I get to read the comments on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
And people are talking to us. That's fun.
Yeah. We like having you around. Back. On Instagram, it's fun hearing parts of episodes that matter to people. Mm-hmm. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. And we will see you soon.
We'll see you later. Goodbye.